More social media censorship. YouTube and Facebook have allegedly taken action against conservative podcast host Steven Crowder, who has obtained and published some pages from the Nashville Covenant School shooter's manifesto. He wrote on X that viewers could instead tune into Rumble to learn more about the manifesto. Nashville's mayor has confirmed that a manifesto leaked online was written by Covenant School shooter Audrey Hale, who was responsible for killing 6 people this past spring. The mayor says the manifesto gives some insight into the gunman's motive for the shooting.
Steven Crowder announced the leak on YouTube yesterday, saying he will be reading the manifesto on his show. He also posted screenshots of the manifesto on social media. The leak reads, Nashville School Covenant shooter Audrey Hale's Death Day manifesto targeted crackers with white privileges from the manifesto. The manifesto also reportedly includes the following: kill those kids, those crackers going to private fancy schools with fancy khakis and backpacks and their daddy's Mustang convertibles. I hope I have a high death count. I'm ready. I hope my victims aren't. Ready to die. Now, this delay in Hale's manifesto's release has actually been a point of contention for conservatives. So now we have Steven Crowder got not the whole manifesto, but essentially pictures of a couple pages of it. And then the mayor of Nashville has confirmed that those are legitimate. That is the shooter's manifesto. There's a couple things we can talk about here. I don't understand what social media companies are doing. Look, this information is going to be out there. It has been confirmed as accurate. Are we like doing a Hunter Biden laptop all over again? We're like, well, we can't confirm the authenticity of hacked materials, blah, blah, blah. It seems very likely that they are, in fact, legitimate, and a commentator
well, they've been confirmed as legitimate.
Right. I guess technically the mayor could be wrong, but
sure.
A commentator is showing, there's no license to be a journalist. You can think whatever you want about Steven Crowder. He's a commentator who obtained information, who's sharing it with the public. I think it is of relevance to the public. If the public wants to understand or think they can divine some kind of better understanding of the shooting from what is in the manifesto, they are entitled to read it. I kind of look down upon that project, and I think crazy people are doing crazy things, and that's regrettable. But it is the case that we've dug into it a lot of times in the past, and people want to score political points based on the ideology of that, all sort of things. So we have a norm and a standard of wanting to understand more about a shooter's motivations, and here we are with some information. What is YouTube doing? What is Facebook doing? They warned essentially Crowder that if you persist in posting this, something could happen with your account.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there are journalists who make the decision all the time not to publish manifestos and the like from mass shooters because there is this mimicry effect that they don't want to be responsible for. I respect that decision from people who make that decision. Of course, that's different from forcing people into that decision by pulling their shows off the internet and the like. So that seems ill-advised. Obviously, in this information age, anybody who wants to see this manifesto can. So I don't agree with that decision from Facebook and YouTube. Getting into the manifesto itself, you're right that many conservatives in particular were really eager to see this manifesto. They felt it was being hidden because its ideological priors might look bad for the left. Do you feel like that's the case, reading these few pages that we have so far anyway?
I mean, I think it shows a very disturbed individual lashing out at, to the extent there's a political valence to what the shooter wrote, it's against well-to-do people. There's maybe there's one line about like yellow mop-haired people. You can read into it a dislike, and crackers obviously is a slur against white people. And the shooter is white.
And also says the F word, pejorative to gays.
Pejorative to gays, yes.
And
despite being
also
a trans person themselves.
Exactly.
So, what I take away from this is that the project of trying to assume or project a coherent ideology onto a mass shooter is almost definitionally, in my view, very flawed. It's something we do. It's something people on both sides of the political spectrum do. I remember when the guy who shot Gabby Giffords in Arizona, the Tucson shooter, there was a whole media cycle about basically trying to blame Sarah Palin for it or blame kind of conservative speech because there had been a target over that district on like districts we want to take back kind of. The heated rhetoric on the right was responsible for it, though there was no evidence he had seen that map, and that his ideas were not, they were all over the place. They were very fringe and lunatic, and was troubled about how language was being manipulated by the dark forces. So the long way of saying, we're looking for coherence where we're not likely to find it because people who do these kinds of things are definitionally unstable.
I think that's true in part. I remember reading the Elliot Rodgers Manifesto years ago. It was, I guess, kind of early on the upswing of these kinds of mass shooting events. And it was the moment that I think put the terminology incel on the map. Mm-hmm. He wrote a lot about feeling diminished as a mixed race person. He was half Asian and half white. He felt as his white family, his white father had abandoned and ignored their family. He felt undesirable in a romantic context. He was resentful of his, I think, either black or Latino college roommates who he felt like were more successful with women. He felt like he was more entitled to women because of being whiter than they were, but living in this liminal state as a half Asian person. The psychological portrait of it was, I will confess, interesting. And there was and that obviously doesn't justify murdering people, but there was a coherence to what the pain that he was feeling or whatever psychological drama that he was going through. And similarly, I do think perhaps people expected this manifesto to say, I'm trans and I hate the world so much that I'm going to kill people because I'm trans. And so far, there's only 3 pages, but the core of the complaint seems to be about her own feelings of economic marginalization. Those crackers go into fancy private schools, fancy khaki sports backpacks with their daddy's Mustangs and convertibles, FU little SHITs. You know, I do wonder if so many of these people end up being disaffected by one way or another, combined with their obvious mental health issues, leads you to be not just a normal person who's mentally unwell, who never kills anybody, never hurts anybody, right, but a mass shooter, and oftentimes in jail or dead at the end of it. And I do wonder about that, given that we do seem to have more of these events in the United States of America, to the extent that there is this cultural component, what there is to be done about it.
It's just usually, I think this pursuit often causes us to look for broader reasons in society that this kind of thing happens when thankfully these things are very rare, and it's not. Then we get this false confidence that, well, if only we could prevent. Well, remember the Columbine shooting prompted all of these narratives that turned out basically to be wrong about how that they'd been bullied so hard. You know, the epidemic of bullying in schools is what caused. You know, they snapped. They were just pushed too hard. Then subsequent reporting showed that they were mean, nasty kids themselves. They bullied plenty of people. They were not like uniquely the most picked upon kids or something.
Well, it's a confluence of things, right? It can be that you are unhappy and that you're bullied. But obviously, most bullied people don't shoot people up.
Your brain didn't develop correctly, and
it could also be that. I mean, I had this experience on my call-in show one day where we were talking about one of these mass shootings, and I had 2 guests call in the same episode who had said that when they were in high school, they came very close to being mass shooters themselves. It was a very emotional revelation that was happening in this very intimate space. And one of them in particular was really emphasizing how he felt kind of romantically non-viable. And he was bi and quite short and Latino in a predominantly white environment, all of these things that he felt in his head. It's not saying that all of it was real, mm-hmm, but that he subjectively felt so invisible and irrelevant that he wanted to take that out on other people. And both of these gentlemen talked about how much they thought about it, how close they came. Like, this is the access I had to a gun, X, Y, and Z, and what it was that eventually caused them to turn around. And however close they actually were in effect to doing something like that, it did speak to me about how I think these sorts of sentiments might be more widespread. Teenagers are so hormonal and depressed and messed up.
I mean, being a teenager is very hard.
and compounded by any number of other social factors. I mean, I guess it is. There's nothing you can do. Some people are just crazy, and that's going to be what it is. But it does make me want to think more about how to be more supportive as communities, generally speaking, for all kinds of reasons, not just to dissuade mass shooters.
We talk a lot, obviously, about what's wrong in society and various places. Schools have become, for boys at least, less violent environments. If you think about there's a lower tolerance for just boys beating the crap out of each other in schools, at recess, sports events, than there was in prior times, which should translate to a massive improvement in their young lives. Obviously, we talk a lot about the depressive effects that girls are experiencing. Maybe their experience hasn't improved so much. There are some arguments that people like Jonathan Haidt have come up that social media is, the rise of it has been bad for girls, but actually not bad for boys, because the way they engage with social media is mostly like video games, which can be community building and can actually allow people who don't have a lot of friends to make friend networks and engage in socialization that's healthy. Because violent video games were also blamed for Columbine. It turns out violent video games are a way to vent, frankly, if you're inclined toward violence without perpetrating real world harms. Or at least that one came up on the Adam Lanza, the Newtown. I don't know how much it was talked about in Columbine, but in the wake of Newtown, it was definitely talked about because he had played Call of Duty or something like that. Anyway, we go looking for meaning, and sometimes when you're staring into the face of just psychotically evil people, I don't know how much we can learn. And
I think the scary thing, and what's scary to me, is the idea that some of them might not be psychotically evil. That there, but for the grace of God, goes any number of people that we might have known. And that's, I think, what's a little chilling for me about reading these sorts of things. But let us know what you think about this manifesto. You might not be able to find it on YouTube, but it's out there on the internet. And do stick around. We have more Rising for you right after this.